I'm Jasmine. Welcome to my world, and today I'm going to record this video and post it late because I didn't do it. I've been busy with finals and stuff like that. Today I want to talk about a book, and as you can see, I'm wearing a book shirt. I have no shelf control, and that's reasonable. Those of you who are new, if you like this video, please subscribe and like and leave a nice little comment. I'd love to say hello. And if you're new, you're wondering about the camera, it's just my thing. I like it. It's the character. It's what I have. Using my resources here. Today I want to talk about a very special book. When I was in middle school, I loved to read a lot of books that were historical fiction. And even to this day, you can't just expect me to do history, pick up a textbook, and just get interested. Because, I'm not. I love history, but I love there to be a story. When it comes to history, I like to learn about people's lives back then, just how they were, how things were. I'm curious. What was life like back then? And the thing I like about books like these is they supply that. You have the story about this girl who lived back then in this situation, and you could see what people's lives were like. And I liked that. So this author is Laurie Halse Anderson. She wrote a lot of books like that. And she a lot of them are they're about a person, a fictional person who lived during a specific time. For instance, this book right here is Fever, 1793. You can see the eyes of this character. Her eyes are jaundiced. Yeah. Her and the reason why that is, I believe medically, when your eyes are like that, it's because your liver or your kidney is damaged or something like that. I don't know the specifics about this, okay? What I do know is that this book takes place in the late 1700s. And what happened in the late 1700s was yellow fever. And the reason why it was called yellow fever was because your eyes would go yellow. It was just old-timey talk for, oh my gosh, you're dying, something is wrong with you, we don't know what. It's like everyone was just terrified. And what I love about books like these is it has a nice setup. Like in the beginning, you have this character Maddie who's in this time where a lot of people are just like, oh, you need to get married, you're young, you're beautiful, you're female, you need to get married. Well, Maddie, I wasn't really on her plate. She didn't really want that. She wanted to run her own coffee shop. And she did. She helped run the family coffee shop, but she wanted to run her own. And so that's what she was working towards. Well, all of that went down when yellow fever happened. And all of a sudden, nobody was worried about her getting married. No one was worried about there being a coffee shop. They were just worried about surviving. And so I want to share a little bit about this book. I think I'm going to read the first chapter. And then I'm going to talk about how I like it. I'm going to suggest it, do a little bit of a review. So let's see. First, so the first chapter, it's not very long. And what I like about, I'm just advertising the book because why not? Might as well just read the first chapter, right? So in the beginning of all the chapters, you have these nice little quotes. And I think they pretty much set up the atmosphere of the chapter. So you have later in the book, for one of the chapters, you have so chapter Chapter 20 is September 27th, 1793. Doctors raving and disputing, death's pale, army still recruiting. Philip Freneau, pestilence, written during the prevalence of yellow fever, 1793. So you can actually find things that were written back then about Philadelphia and just the whole setting of the book and yellow fever. So I'm going to read the first chapter, which is chapter 1. Obviously, it takes place on August 16th, 1793. And there's a quote by Lord Adam Gordon in his journal from 1765. The city of Philadelphia is perhaps one of the wonders of the world, and there's a snowplow going by. Okay. I woke to the sound of a mosquito whining in my left ear and my mother screeching in the right. Rouse yourself this instant. Mother snapped open the shutters, and heat poured into our bedchamber. The room above our coffee house was not large. 2 beds, a washstand, and a wooden trunk with frayed leather straps nearly filled it. It seemed even smaller with Mother storming around. Get out of bed, Matilda, she continued. You're sleeping the day away. She shook my shoulder. Polly's late, and there's work to be done. The noisy mosquito darted between us. Okay, that right there is a foreshadow. I've read this book so many times. So the noisy mosquito darted between us. Yellow fever is also known as malaria, and it's carried by mosquitoes. And so it makes sense that the book would start off in the beginning of yellow fever, which was in summer, with the mosquitoes. Some little science right there. Never mind, it doesn't fit. I forgot what I was going to say. Continue. I started to sweat under the thin blanket. It was going to be another hot August day. Another long, hot August day. Another long, hot, boring, wretched August day. I can't tell who was lazier, Polly or you, Mother muttered as she stalked out of the room. When I was a girl, we were up before the sun. Her voice droned on and on as she clattered down the stairs. I groaned. Mother had been a perfect girl. Her family was wealthy then, but that didn't stop her from stitching entire quilts before breakfast, or spinning miles of wool before tea. It was the war, she liked to remind me. Children did what was asked of them, and she never complained. Oh, no, never. Good children were seen and not heard. How utterly unlike me. I yawned and stretched, then snuggled back onto my pillow. A few more minutes' rest. That's what I needed. I'd float back to sleep, drifting like Blanchard's giant yellow balloon. I could just see it, the winter's day, the crowds on the rooftops, the balloon tugging at its ropes. I held my breath. Would the ropes break? The devilish mosquito attacked, sinking its needle-nosed into my forehead. Now reading about the yellow balloon and the mosquito. And in the forehead, yeah, there's things are happening. And it's just the first chapter. Ow! I leapt from my bed and thunk, cracked my head on the sloped ceiling. The ceiling was lower than it used to be. Either that, or I had grown another inch overnight. I sat back down, wide awake now. My noggin sporting 2 lumps, one from the ceiling, one from the mosquito. No balloon trips for me. To work then. I got to my feet and crossed the room, ducking my head cautiously. The water in the wash basin was cloudy, and the face cloth smelled like old cheese. I decided to clean up later. Perhaps next December. A squeaking mouse dashed by my toes, followed by a flash of orange fur named Silas. The mouse ran to a corner, its claws scratching desperately on the floorboards. Silas pounced. The squeaking stopped. Oh, Silas, did you have to do that? Silas didn't answer. He rarely did. Instead, he jumped up on Mother's quilt and prepared to pick apart his breakfast. Mother's best quilt. Mother abhorred mice. I sprang across the room. Get down, I commanded. Silas hissed at me, but obeyed, leaping to the floor and patting out the door. You know, my cat, Buddy, he's orange. He would not do that. He would just keep going. Matilda, Mother's voice called up the stairs now. Now! I made a face at the doorway. I had just saved her precious quilt from disaster, but what would she appreciate it? Of course not. No more dawdling. I had to get dressed. I fastened my stays in a badly embroidered pocket over the white shift I slept in. Then I stepped onto my blue linen skirt, It nearly showed my ankles, along with the ceiling getting lower. My clothes were shrinking too. Once dressed, I faced the rather dead mouse and wrinkled my nose. Picking it up by the tail, I carried the corpse to the front window and leaned out. My city, Philadelphia, was wide awake. My heart beat faster and my head cleared. Below the window, High Street teemed with horsemen, carriages, and carts. I could hear Mrs. Henning gossiping on her front stoop, and dogs barking at a pig running loose in the street. The sound of the blacksmith's hammer on his anvil reminded me of Polly, our tardy serving girl. That's where she was, no doubt, in the blacksmith's shop, eyeing Matthew, the blacksmith's son. I didn't like it there. The roaring furnace sparks crackling in the air, the sizzle of hot metal into cold water. It all reminded me of that unmentionable place the preachers like to go on about. My favorite place was the waterfront. I squinted eastward. The rooftop of the State House, where the Congress met, was visible, but the August haze and dust from the street made it impossible to see further than that. On a clear day, I could see the masts of the ships tied up at the wharves on the Delaware River. I promised myself a secret visit to the docks later, as soon as Polly arrived to distract Mother. A few blocks south lay the Walnut Street prison, where Blanchard had flown that remarkable balloon. Balloon at a prison? Maybe Blanchard's a prisoner. From the prison's courtyard it rose, a yellow silk bubble escaping the earth. I vowed to do that one day, slip free of the ropes that held me. Nathaniel Benson had heard me say it, but he did not laugh. He understood. Perhaps I would see him at the docks, sketching a ship or seagulls. It had been a long time since we talked. But before I went anywhere, there was a dead mouse to dispose of. I couldn't throw it into the High Street. It might spook one of the horses. I crossed the room and opened the back window, overlooking the garden. Maybe Silas would smell his treat out there and get a decent breakfast after all. I flung the corpse as far as I could, and then hurried downstairs before Mother boiled over. So that is the first chapter. And now, I'd like to talk about some of the foreshadowing that I saw in the first chapter as someone who's read this book so many times. Okay, so there's a lot of mention of mosquitoes and the color yellow and corpses out the window. So, yellow fever, yellow balloons. Does it seem odd to you that Anderson would make the balloon yellow and not some other color? And it's like, it has this element of, oh, there's a mosquito, and it's like, the characters, it's like if you've read the book a few times and you hear the word mosquito, and you see that the mosquito bit Maddie, and it's just like, oh my gosh. Things are unfolding. There's some message that Anderson is giving the reader. It's like, it's a mosquito. Maddie has no idea. No one has any idea. Now, a couple of chapters in, you read that there are people sick by the docks. You hear that, you read that. But nobody ever really thinks, oh, it's malaria, this is contagious. And things don't start happening until they happen. And it's like an apocalypse when this happens. Yeah, it's exciting. And so the last part, when Maddie throws the mouse out the window and she describes it as a corpse. What happened back then is a lot of people, you could see people throwing bodies out the window. Family members, they couldn't leave the house. People were too scared. And it's like, how are you going to carry a dead body down the stairs? It's easier to just throw it out the window. And that's what people did. They threw him out the window, and someone came and picked him up, and they brought him to be buried. And so yeah, there's a few. It's like Anderson's trying to grab the reader's attention. Like, this is it. This is what you're looking at. And I just think it's so exciting. And I'd love to talk about more books, because now I'm realizing that once I start talking about them, I can't stop talking about them. But I better, or else I'm just going to end up reading the entire book to you guys. So, anyway, I highly suggest this book. These books, they're not for the faint of heart. This one, I know, it's not for the faint of heart. you start feeling something for the characters, even though they're fake, but you know it's history and it actually happened, not these people. The majority of the people in this book, they're from the author. They're characters that the author came up with. And so you really start feeling for them. And like as the book progresses, you start to root for Maddie in her struggles, and you start feeling her feelings. And it's like, oh my gosh, this really stinks. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe and hit that notification button. And so yeah, Merry Christmas!